Hey Sugar Snaps, welcome to the Textile Indie YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Brittany. Here on Textile Indie, I share tutorials and inspiration in fiber and textile crafts. And last week I did a tutorial on how to crochet a granny square, a 12 petal floral granny square. And I have one of those here. In today's tutorial, I want to show you how to take these granny squares and turn them into a cute crocheted purse, project bag, or however you want to use this. We'll be using 15 granny squares, crochet seaming them together, and then attaching a crocheted handle. I've done mine pretty short because I'm going to use this as a project bag for other knit and crochet projects. For this project, you're going to need 15 granny squares. You can use any 4-inch granny square. If you want to use the 12 petal floral like this one, you can see here the tutorial and I have it listed in the description below. You're going to need the same color yarn that you made the border of your granny square if you want your seams to kind of blend in like mine do. You don't see the crochet seam because I use the same color. That allows for blending of any mistakes, but it also means that your seams aren't quite as obvious if you want to kind of hide that you're joining the granny squares together. You're also going to need a 5mm crochet hook or a crochet hook that corresponds to the yarn that you're using. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover how to weave in the tails on your granny squares individually, and then how to lay out the pattern so that you end up with this shape of bag. So you'll be able to screenshot or reference the layout that I have in the video to lay out your bag. I'll also go over how to create a crocheted forward seam so that the crocheted seam shows on the outside, and we will combine all of these granny squares together, finish off the body of the bag, and then I'll show you how to crochet a really simple handle for your crochet bag and how to crochet attach it on the side. I'll also quickly skim over how to create a finished edge by doing a single crochet along the edge of the handle and the bag opening if you want to finish it off like that, and then wet blocking this by soaking it in water and then stretching it out on a blocking board, or you can use it right away once you've stitched it together. And I needed to block it to get it into a nice shape because the squares were a little bit wonky. So I will go over that, and then you will be ready to use your project bag or purse. An additional step you can do on your handbag that I don't have in this tutorial is lining your bag with fabric. Here is the layout for all of the granny squares for this bag. I'll show you where I did the seams and how you would seam these together, and then we will fold this up so that we can complete the bag shape and do the last stitching. To create the bag overall pattern, you're going to have the squares set up in diagonals, and that means that they will sit like a diamond rather than sitting upright like a square. So you'll have a row of 3 and then another row that the 3 touch another granny square and one more on the end. So a row of 3, a row of 4, offset one above that first row, and then another row of 3 with a square going lower, another row of 4 with another square going lower, and then one square up here. So if you use this, even screenshot the video and take this image, lay your granny squares out in this order, then you'll be set up for your granny square bag. So once you have your granny squares laid out, you're going to stitch them together. And what I like to do is stitch all in the same direction and then go in the opposite or perpendicular direction. So for example, this granny square here, I crocheted these 2 together, and then I crocheted this whole section here. So these 4 together. This one was already attached, so I ended up having 5 together. And then I crocheted this row all the way across, so connecting these 8 here. And then I connected these 2 here with this guy, connected this one on the edge. So I did all of the seams going in this direction. towards the upper left. And then I went towards the upper right. So I did this seam all the way up here. I connected this section here. I connected this section here, and then I connected this last granny square here. And because I had done that initial seam going towards the upper left, most of these were already attached. I just had to stitch in between to get them to fully attach. In order to connect our granny squares to start to build the fabric for our bag, we're going to take 2 granny squares. You'll set them in front of you like this. And we have our little corner pieces that we created when we made our stitches. These we're going to use as reference points to start. So grab your crochet hook, your yarn, and leaving a bit of a tail, you're going to make a slip knot in your working yarn. So yarn coming from your yarn skein. I have a bit of a tail, and I'm going to set this slip knot aside. Now for this granny square, I did 2 single crochet, chain 1, and then 2 single crochet. I want to catch the corner where that chain is happening, and I'm going to catch it on the one on the top. So if you work top to bottom, this would be my top, this will be my bottom, and I have the granny squares oriented so that the chain edge shows from the front. So this is the front of the granny square, and I'm going to stay oriented like this the entire time I'm working for all of my granny squares. So I can compare the two. This is the back side of the granny square. You can see that edge. The V shapes are no longer showing. They have more of looped edge kind of look. Here on this edge, you can see that little bit of a V shape, kind of like the chain shape of crochet. That means that this one is right side up, this one is wrong side up. So I'm going to flip this back around so I have 2 squares that are right side up. And then I'll take my hook and I'm going to grab the bottom loop, so that top loop of the chain edge. I'm going to grab the bottom loop of this corner chain right here. So catch this loop with my crochet hook, and then catch the bottom loop from the top of this corner as well. So I take my hook and catch this loop right here from the top to the back. So now I have 2 loops on my crochet hook. I'm going to take the loop from my yarn, the slip knot that I created, slide that slip knot on, tighten it up just a little bit so that it slides easily, but it's tight enough that I don't have extra yarn there. And then I'm going to take this slip knot and pull through the 2 loops on my crochet hook. So pull through that first one, pull through this second one, pull tight. And I want this yarn that I'm working with to stay working up the crochet hook behind the work. So then in your next space, if you figure out where you went, which chain you worked in first, you're now going to take your crochet hook, catch the bottom loop of the next chain in the row on the top square, and then grab the bottom loop of the next chain in the bottom square. So working top to bottom, and then yarn over with the yarn coming from your yarn skein, and you have the 3 loops here and a yarn over. I'm going to take my yarn over and go through all 3 loops on my crochet hook. And there, right under here, I can see my first stitch. I'll do a few here, and you'll want to do a few before you can see the line start to appear. So then the next stitch right in here would catch with my hook, catch this opposite loop on the lower granny square, yarn over, pull my yarn through all 3 loops, making sure to not split the yarn. I'm going to show you the same thing using the yellow yarn. so that you can see it a little bit more clearly on the camera. So I'll grab 2 new granny squares. I'm going to create my slip knot in the yellow yarn now. Set this aside. And now on the edge, find that corner loop and catch the outer edge of that corner. And then the outer edge of this corner going from the top of the square towards the back of the square, and then apply the loop onto your crochet hook. Tighten this up gently and then pull the loop through both green loops on my hook, like so. And now my hook is loaded with the yellow yarn that I'm working with. Make sure that you're yarning over with the end coming from the yarn skein, not your tail end. So you can slide that out of your way, the tail end, so you don't accidentally grab that. Now I'm going to catch the next stitch, grab the outer loop, that lower loop, and then the outer loop on the next stitch of the lower granny square, yarn over. And now I have my original yellow loop, 2 granny square loops in the green, and my yarn over. I'll pull this yarn over through all 3 loops on the crochet hook, like so. So then there's my first stitch. You can see it in the yellow right in there. We'll do this again. From the top, catch the outer edge of this guy, outer edge of this guy, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And try not to split your yarn. Like so. Do another one. You always go grab the top first, and then the bottom granny square, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, grab the top, grab from the bottom, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. You start to create this chain shape to combine the 2. If you pull apart, you can see that sort of stretches out. I'm going to show this a little bit closer so you can see these stitches a little bit better. So my next stitch will be this one right here. So I'm going to send my hook, catch from the top to the underneath of that granny square, stitch, and then my next stitch is right here for this one. So I catch this outer loop here by catching that loop with my crochet hook. So I have 3 stitches on my, or 3 loops on my crochet hook. Then I'll yarn over and pull that loop through all 3 loops on my crochet hook. So again, this loop here, this loop here, yarn over, pull these through, this through all 3. So it looks like so. I would do that all the way to the end of this edge. And then if you are putting a pattern together and you want to attach multiples, you can come in, line up your next set and continue to go across, adding in your next 2. And then once you've done all the way along in the same direction, you'd start on your opposite corner and go across to stitch these together in this direction. When you've worked all the way across, like I have here, you can see this little edge right there. That is where I just did this joint. Now I'm going to take 2 more granny squares, line them up against where I just did my joint, and catch that same corner that I originally caught on the top one first. So I'll catch this corner loop, doing the same thing, just attaching these 4 together. And then the same loop on this one, which is this guy right here. And then grab my yarn, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. Like so. And you want to make sure that that stitch is a little bit tight when you have your loops on the crochet hook, because you're creating kind of a joint between all 4 of these with this one stitch. And having it a little bit tighter will mean there's not as much looseness there. So then I would continue by catching the outer loop of that edge and the outer loop of the bottom edge, yarn over, And now I'm back to 3 loops on the crochet hook from the 2 granny squares right here. So they aren't connected here or here, they're just connected in this one direction, which is going to be the case all the way across when you are working in this same direction. Once you've gone all the way and you've finished the number of granny squares you want in this direction to complete your piece of fabric, then you'll go back and start from the other side and work your way up in this direction, doing the same thing. You'll just be seaming over top of this seam here, or your original seam. Whichever seam you do last is going to be on top of your first seams. So I'll keep stitching these together this way until I've completed all in this direction, and then I'm going to bind this off and work in the other direction. If you need to reference the granny square layout once again, you can check the description below. I've put a timestamp down there if you want to reference that from the video. I've also put a link to a corresponding blog post where I have a photo of the layout, so you can reference that to lay out and stitch together your granny squares to follow along with this pattern. When you finish the section like I have here, where I've gone up these sections and I need to finish this section off, I'm going to cut a 10-inch tail, loop over my hook and pull this loop all the way through, and then tighten that off like you're binding off your crochet. Now I can use this tail to weave in here to finish off this edge. So here I would take a tapestry needle, load it with this tail, and then send the loop into the edge of my crochet to finish this tail off. Weave it into the fabric a ways, and then once you've pulled that through, you can cut the excess off and that end is woven in. So now this direction is complete. I can come in and start working in this direction. So for my bag pattern, this section, these are the only 2 quadrants that need to be attached together. There's none that will continue on this edge. We will end up stitching around the edge of it, but to combine the 2, we don't need to attach any more granny squares. So I'm going to crochet join these 2 or these 4 granny squares, skipping over this center point. So again, I would start with a slip knot, leaving a tail, set this aside, and then pick up the corner loop on this granny square and on this corner as well. Attach the loop, tighten it up, and then pull the loop through both of those. Make sure that I'm pulling from the skein and not the tail. Get the tail out of my way. And then just like we did before, I'll come to the top granny square, catch that outer loop, and then the bottom granny square, catch the outer loop, yarn over, and go through all 3 loops on the hook. As you get in close to that middle where it connects in this direction and we're going perpendicular to that, you're going to be kind of filling that space. So it'll be a little bit tricky to catch your correct loops, but bring it to the front, yarn over, pull through, and then I'll get one more in there to catch that so that I don't end up with any holes. And then I'm going to have the yarn on top of that center point, jump over the middle seam here, and then move to the next one, keeping the yarn underneath. Catch the edge of this loop, this one, yarn over and pull through. Now we've jumped over that center seam and continue to crochet the squares together perpendicular to that original seam. So looks like that. Now I have the layout like this. I'm ready to fold this up and prepare it to stitch. But actually, before I do that, I am going to finish off my tails here, weave in these tails so that they don't get in my way when I'm trying to finish this off. So as an example of weaving in the tails, you'll load a tapestry needle with one of these ends and then come in and go in one direction, weave this in for a few stitches in and out of the stitching, and then I'm going to jump this back in the opposite direction and catch some stitches going in this way so that I'm kind of zigzagging it in, trying to hide it in that seam. And then I would cut that short so that there's just a little tiny tail sticking out. So I'm going to do that for all of these tails to get them out of my way. To stitch this together, we're going to do it with the right side facing out. So we need to flip this over, right side facing down, wrong side up. And then fold this side with the kind of funky end in towards the middle so that these points match up here, like so. And then fold this up. This bottom square, you're going to fold up into that space, and then these two side squares you're going to fold in and fold in half so that they meet here. And here is your bag shape. This is the bottom of the bag. This will be the opening of the bag here, and then your handles will be stitched from this point to this point, however big of a handle you want. So we're going to do a zigzag seam from this point over here down to connect these two here, up to connect these, down here, up this edge, and then crisscross over, up, over, and end at this point. So just like we've been doing, start with a tail and a slip knot on your yarn leading from your skein, and then bring your crochet hook and come in. We'll line these up next to each other and you can catch your loops. So I'll catch the bottom or the top and then the bottom, like so, and then add my slip knot, tighten that up a bit, pull this through, make it that tail kind of tucked in so that it's out of my way. Get that loop back on there, and then pull the loop through these first two loops here, and now catch a loop on the top square, loop on the bottom square, yarn over, pull through 3 loops. I'll keep doing that along the 2 edges of this granny square. Then when you've come to the edge of that point, we're going to turn and come up this to attach this bottom piece to the seam there. So again, you'll turn, you'll catch the next stitch and the next stitch on the lower one and continue to work. And this is fairly simple. You're just following the edge stitches and matching them up edge to edge. If at some point you don't have enough stitches on one square compared to the other, then, and that does happen, if there's a miscounting or something, then you can stitch 2 stitches from one square into 1 stitch of the other square to kind of get them to line up. And it's a little bit of a fudging to get them to match, but it doesn't cause anything too weird in bubbling or creasing of the fabric, so you can kind of ease it in to get them to match up. When you get to this final upper edge, so we've gone this way along here, you're going to cut a tail, send this through that loop, tighten it off, and then use your needle. We're going to thread this tail into fabric. Stitching it in back and forth a few times so that it disappears into the work. And then you'll want to do the same thing to your other end, which will be inside. And there is your bag body, right there. Now this edge is where we're going to attach the handles up here. Now we're going to create the handles for this bag. So come to the upper corners here and open this up so that you can see the square. And you have a edge here with the chains. This top stitch, we're going to use that as our reference point. So this stitch at the top of the corner, and you want to move over 4 stitches from there. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. In that stitch, send your crochet hook, and then take the end of your handle color, whether you're using the same color or a different color, lay that over top of your hook and pull a loop through. And then grab the tail and line it up on top of your work. We're going to work that into our crocheting from here on. Now from here, chain 3. So I'm going to chain 1, 2, and 3. Then yarn over, and in the next space, you're going to do 1 double crochet. So in the next stitch, 1 double crochet, like so. And then in the next space, we're going to do a single crochet. So single crochet into this stitch here, single crochet into the next stitch, and now slip stitch into this top stitch or the peak of the square. So I'll take my crochet hook, send it through, yarn over, and pull through that crochet stitch and through the loop on my crochet hook. So that's a slip stitch. And then the next space is a single crochet, another single crochet in the next stitch, and then yarn over, double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the stitch after that. So you'll have a total of 9 stitches started so far. Now turn your work, so you're working on the back side of the handle or the inside of the handle, chain 3, and now we'll work in double crochet in each space all the way across. And you can do this handle in double crochet like I'm doing if you're going to be using it for something light or a project bag. You're not going to be carrying a lot of weight. If you want it to be a little bit sturdier, then I would do this in a single crochet or even a slip stitch, so you end up with a nice firm fabric that will add stability to the handle so that it doesn't stretch out on you and also have durability. So now we're going to work back and forth those 9 stitches in whatever stitch you've chosen until the handle is the length that you choose, and then we'll connect it to this other corner of the bag. When you've gotten the handle to the length that you desire, you're going to prepare it to attach to the other side. So make sure that your handle lays flat, it doesn't end up twisted when you attach it, and then bring it over to the other side of the bag. Now to connect these two together, we're going to find that peak stitch, count over 4, and we're going to start out in that 4th stitch. So catch the top loop of the first stitch on your handle piece. You want the yarn in front of your hook. Bring the yarn over and around. You're going to pull through the first loop, yarn over and pull through the next 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops, like so. Now catch the next stitch on the handle, come over, keep the yarn on top, catch the next stitch on the bag, bring the loop around, yarn over, pull through the first stitch, yarn over, pull through the next 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops, like so. Then keep the yarn in the front, then catch the next stitch, keep the yarn on top, catch this stitch on the bag, yarn over and pull through 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. We're doing a single crochet here. Now we have one more stitch and then we're at the peak. So we're going to catch a stitch on the handle, catch a stitch on the bag, yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, like so. Then catch the loop on the bag, catch the peak stitch on the, catch the loops on the handle, then catch the loops on the bag, pull a loop through that and all the other stitches on your hook. So you do a slip stitch in that space. In the next space, catch the handle, catch the bag, stitches, yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2. Then the next one, go through the first 2 on the handle, go through the 2 on this handle, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, yarn over, pull through 2, like so. And then in the next space, we're going to catch the corner of that last, the chain on the handle, and then the next stitch on the bag. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Take your scissors, cut a tail, yarn over, pull that tail all the way through, tighten it up, and then let's weave this into the fabric using our tapestry needle. Then I'll cut this tail, come over here and do the same thing on this other side. And there is my bag with a handle. If you want, you can block your bag. It is a good idea because it will straighten out your stitches and just clean things up shape-wise. You can also come in and do a single crochet or a slip stitch edge around the edge to clean it up a bit. Bring your hook into the edge of the stitch. You can decide where you would want to do that. I'll start on the handle because it's a little bit funky of an edge. I come into the side of one of these stitches, yarn over and pull a loop through, and start with a chain 1, and then in each stitch I'd yarn over, pull through, do a slip stitch around across the edge, maybe 2 slip stitches per double crochet space here. And this will just help clean up the edge a bit so that you have a finished edge there. And then when you get to the edge of the granny squares, there will be the edges that you can stitch into like you would for normal crochet, and I'll do a stitch per space in single crochet. Cut this tail because I've worked it in a bit. And now you can see a little bit more of a finished edge, and I'd continue that all the way along here to join in all of the seams and make sure wherever there's the corners of the granny squares, it's nice and smooth so there's no jog. hope you had fun crocheting your little purse or handbag, project bag, whatever you're going to use it for. Thanks so much for joining me in this video. Like and subscribe to support my channel. I really appreciate you doing that, and I will see you in my next video. Happy making. See you later.